I think NATO should remain focused on Europe and the North Atlantic area's territorial defense, but we should not feel guilty about it as Europeans when we say that, because in an aggressive multipolar world, Europe's security and Europe as an ally to America become more important than they were in the last 20 years or so, and that unilateral US moment. So Europe's security and the North Atlantic community security is important again to the United States in a way that it wasn't. I'm not saying Trump administration views it that way, but I think that's an objective statement to make. So let's not feel guilty about it as Europeans. Deterrence, exercises, logistics, all of that stuff in Europe is important to NATO and important to America. NATO-EU cooperation then needs to focus on those areas where European countries and the EU collectively brings competence in that full spectrum of security that is what our security is now. It is that hybrid space, one of the 7 areas that the NATO-EU agenda has on it, but I think the one where really progress has actually been made, it's cyber, it's CBRN, it's competing with disinformation. It is even resilience for future pandemics, COVID threats, where I think even NATO-EU coordination and NATO-European country cooperation can be very helpful logistically and will make it more meaningful to European populations. Third point, very quickly, I think at a military level, for this kind of arrangement to work, European members of NATO, EU member states, need to backfill what will inevitably be a continued US military drawdown. You know, whether we put this under headings of PESCO EDF collaborating with NATO defense planning, that's fine. I'm not enough of an expert to know all the various routes that this can go, but that burden sharing debate, especially after COVID or through COVID, where money is going to become incredibly tight, including in America, is not going to go away and become incredibly important. So what can we as Europeans be doing to backfill real capability? That is not going away. It's going to be critical. A comment about, I'll close with Russia, China, and then kind of broader Europe. Russia, look, yeah, I'm skeptical as to what we can do in terms of negotiating things with Russia. I don't think there's anything we can do in the West broadly to overcome Russian insecurity and paranoia. So I have very limited views as to what's possible. But I would say that what NATO does is it provides a venue for European countries to bridge their own differences. So almost one of the most important things NATO can do, beyond all of its deterrence and all of the things I talked about a minute ago, is the US presence at the table when we're talking about Russia forces a kind of solidarity amongst European countries that you do not get in the EU-only debate. So I just want to underscore the importance of NATO for that, and therefore how the EU can use, and your EU members can use NATO for that purpose. China, look, America will be drawn away by the China threat. We as Europeans will, I feel, never feel as committed to it. We don't have the same skin in the game. We can't pretend we will. But if the debate about China becomes one that is exclusively Europe versus China, US versus China, and Europe trying to be in the middle, all of this talk we hear these days about equidistance and a third way, then ultimately NATO will atrophy. Because if Europeans are seen as synonymous with trying to sort of have NATO and America in to protect against Russia, but the other thing, we're just going to try and stand in the middle, NATO will atrophy. I think this is a little bit what Julian was just saying, and I agree with him on that point. What I would say here is there's little we can do physically in terms of security in that area, but we have to be discussing China and the China contingencies and China risks in the North Atlantic Council. It needs to be a core part of the political dialogue. My black elephant is Taiwan. But I do believe that Turkey, to Solly's points, Turkey is where we can have a debate about Mediterranean and Middle East security, with Turkey having to be more of an honest player. Get the Turkey debate in NATO, where Turkey is a contributor, as Solly said, and where America's weight can help us overcome some of the problems. But I'm not a big believer in NATO expansion more globally, in Indo-Pacific, all of that stuff. That's much more, I think, about plurilateral and bilateral cooperation than something for NATO to do.